The sky above the distant planet was dark with smoke. Fires burned across the surface. Ships fell from space like stars dying. Explosions lit up the night, and the screams of the wounded echoed through broken cities below. High above it all, a small escape pod broke free from the wreckage of a much larger warship. It spun wildly as it shot away from the battlefield, trailing fire behind it. Inside that pod sat one lone survivor. Her name was Lyra. She was Varelian, a warrior race known across the stars for their strength and skill in battle. But now, she was alone. Her armor was cracked. Her body was covered in wounds. She barely had enough strength to hold on to the controls. The ship's systems flickered. Warning lights blinked red. Fuel was low. Life support was failing. She knew she might not make it out alive. Still, she held on. Lyra looked at the star map on her screen. Most of the planets near her were either uninhabitable or under enemy control. One world still showed green readings, life signs, breathable, air, water. It was far, but it was her only hope. She set the coordinates. The pod shuddered. A final burst of power pushed her into deep space. Then everything went black. When she woke up, pain shot through her body. Her vision blurred. Her breath came in short gasps. The escape pod was damaged beyond repair. Smoke filled the cabin. Alarms screamed, then died. Through swollen eyes, she saw trees outside the shattered window. Tall ones. Green. Not the kind she knew from home. She was on a planet. Alive. Somehow, Lyra tried to move. Her legs didn't respond. Her left arm hung limp. Blood dripped from her forehead. She groaned and reached for the emergency kit strapped to her seat. With shaking fingers, she pulled out a syringe full of healing gel. She injected it into her neck. The pain lessened slowly. Her breathing steadied. Strength returned to her limbs, but not fully. She would need more rest, more time. Outside, birds chirped. Wind rustled the leaves. The smell of pine and earth filled the air. This place was quiet. Too quiet. She pressed a button on her wrist. Nothing happened. Her suit's comms were down. Her locator beacon was dead. She couldn't call for help. She couldn't send a message. She was truly alone. Lyra forced herself to stand. Every movement hurt. Her knees nearly gave way, but she made it to the exit hatch. With a hiss and a loud crack, the door opened. Fresh air hit her face. Cold. Clean. Different from her homeworld. She stepped out. Her boots sank into soft ground. Moss covered the forest floor. Trees towered around her like giants. Sunlight filtered through the leaves. She looked up. The sky was blue, not the purple-red of her home planet. This was a strange place. She needed shelter, food, water, and most of all, time to heal. Lyra stumbled forward, dragging her injured leg behind her. She moved slowly, carefully. Every step sent pain through her body, but she kept going. Hours passed. Night began to fall. Still walking, she found a cave hidden between two large rocks. It was small, dry, and safe from the wind. She crawled inside and collapsed. Darkness swallowed her again. The next morning, Lyra woke to the sound of footsteps, soft, careful. She opened her eyes and saw something move outside the cave. Not an animal. Something else. A human. He wore a brown jacket and heavy boots. He carried a bag on his back and a small device in his hand. He looked around, scanning the area. Lyra held her breath. If he saw her, what would he do? Would he run? Would he scream? Would he try to hurt her? She didn't know. The man took a few steps closer. His eyes searched the shadows. Then he turned and walked away. She let out a slow breath. Not yet. She wasn't ready to be seen. Not yet. For days, Lyra stayed hidden. She moved from cave to cave. She drank from streams. She ate berries and roots when she could find them. The healing gel helped, but it wasn't enough. Her body was still weak, her mind tired. She avoided roads. She avoided towns. She avoided people. But they were everywhere. Sometimes she heard voices. Sometimes she saw lights in the distance. Sometimes she caught glimpses of cars driving along winding paths. She watched them from afar. They looked so small, so fragile. And yet they built things. They used tools. They talked to each other. They laughed. They lived. It reminded her of her own people before the war, before everything changed. She missed her home. She missed her family. But they were gone. Now, buried under burning skies and broken cities, she was all that remained, a ghost of a forgotten war. One night, Lyra followed a stream deeper into the forest. The air was colder now. Leaves had begun to change color. The wind carried the scent of rain. She stopped to rest by a fallen tree. Her body ached. Her thoughts drifted. What would happen if someone found her? Would they understand? Would they care? She closed her eyes. Sleep came quickly. She dreamed of fire, of falling ships, of voices calling her name. Then she heard something, real footsteps closer this time. She opened her eyes, a light shined through the trees. Someone was coming. She tried to move, to hide, but her body betrayed her. She fell. The light grew brighter. A voice called out, "Hello?" It was a man. He sounded surprised, curious. Lyra didn't answer. She couldn't. The footsteps stopped. The man saw her. He stood frozen. She looked up at him. Her face was bruised, her clothes torn. Her skin shimmered faintly in the dim light. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he dropped to his knees. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She didn't speak. She didn't trust her voice. He looked at her injuries. His eyes widened. "You're hurt," he said. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small blanket. Carefully, he placed it over her shoulders. "I won't hurt you," he said softly. "Can you walk?" She nodded slowly. He helped her up. His name was Ethan. He was a forest ranger. He lived alone in a cabin nearby. He had seen strange things before, lost hikers, wild animals, even UFO reports. But never anything like her. She leaned on him as they walked. Together, they moved through the trees, toward safety, toward hope. Ethan led her to his cabin. It was small but warm. Fire burned. In the fireplace, books lined the shelves. Pictures of nature hung on the walls. He sat her down on a wooden chair. "Stay here," he said. He left for a moment and came back with bandages, water, and food. "You must be hungry," he said. She didn't eat. Not at first. She just looked at him. He smiled. "It's okay," he said. "You're safe now." She didn't believe him. Not yet. But something about him felt different. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't angry. He was, and that confused her. She had seen many things in her life. War, pain, betrayal, but kindness, that was rare, especially toward someone like her. Later that night, Ethan called his friend Maggie. She was a nurse who worked at a small clinic in town. He told her he had found someone badly hurt. Someone who needed help. She agreed to come. When she arrived, she saw Lyra sitting by the fire. She didn't ask questions right away. Instead, she checked her wounds. "She's not human," Maggie whispered. "No," Ethan said quietly. "But she needs our help." Maggie nodded. She cleaned Lyra's cuts. She wrapped her arm. She gave her medicine. All the while, Lyra watched her. No fear, only concern. More kindness. Lyra didn't know what to feel. She had been taught that humans were weak, that they were easy prey. But these two, they were strong, in a different way she didn't understand. Days passed. Lyra stayed in the cabin. Ethan and Maggie brought her food, gave her clean clothes, spoke to her gently. At first, she didn't talk much. Just nods. Small gestures. But slowly she began to speak. Broken sentences. Simple words. They listened. They cared. They didn't turn her away. Even though she was different, even though she was alien, they still chose to help. One evening, as the sun set outside, Lyra looked at Ethan and Maggie. She finally spoke clearly. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ethan smiled. "Because it's the right thing to do." Maggie nodded. "Because we can." Lyra looked at them both. Something inside her shifted. Maybe she wasn't alone after all. Maybe she wasn't forgotten. The days passed slowly at Ethan's cabin. Outside, the forest grew quiet with the coming of autumn. Leaves turned gold and red before falling to the ground. The wind got colder. Nights came earlier. Inside the cabin, Lyra stayed close to the fire. She didn't speak much, but she watched everything. She watched how Ethan moved through his home, how he cooked simple meals, how he read books by lamplight. She watched Maggie as she checked her wounds, cleaned them again, and changed the bandages. Maggie was careful with her hands, gentle. She didn't rush. She didn't push. Lyra had never known that kind of care. Not from her own people. Not from anyone. She began to sleep better. Her body healed more each day. The pain in her leg lessened. The deep cuts on her arms closed up. The bruise on her face faded into a soft yellow. Ethan gave her clothes, his own shirts and sweaters, which were too big for her but warm. He found an old pair of boots that fit well enough. "You'll be walking soon," he told her one morning, handing her a bowl of hot soup. She looked at him, then at the soup. "Thank you," she said softly. It was the first time she thanked him. He smiled. "You're welcome." At night, Lyra would sit near the window and look outside. She saw stars above, just like the ones she knew from space. But they looked different here, closer, brighter. Sometimes she tried to find familiar constellations. Sometimes she failed. Earth was far from her homeworld. She was truly alone now, or so she thought. One evening, while Maggie was cleaning Lyra's arm, she asked gently, "Where are you from?" Lyra paused. She looked at Ethan, who sat nearby, reading a book, then back at Maggie. "I don't know if you will understand," she said. "We'll try," Maggie replied. Lyra took a breath. "My world, it was destroyed." She looked down at her hands. "There was a war. My people. We fought. We lost." Ethan put the book down. "I'm sorry," he said. Lyra shook her head. "You do not need to be sorry. You did not do this." Maggie sat beside her. "What happened?" she asked. Lyra stared into the fire. "We were soldiers, peacekeepers. We were sent to stop a war between two other races. But our leaders, they lied. They wanted power. They betrayed us." Her voice grew quiet. "They left us behind. They let us die." Ethan and Maggie exchanged looks. "That's awful," Maggie whispered. Lyra nodded. "I was lucky. I escaped. I flew away. I did not know where I would land, only that I needed to live." Silence filled the room. Then Ethan spoke. "You're safe now." Lyra looked at him. "I hope that is true," she said. "It is," he said firmly. The next day, Ethan went out to check the traps he set for animals. He always made sure to leave extra food around for deer and rabbits. He believed in balance, in giving back what he took. Lyra followed him outside. The cold air hit her face. She pulled the sweater tighter around her shoulders. "You go out every day?" she asked. "Yes," Ethan said. "This is my job. I take care of the forest." She looked around. "You live alone?" "For a long time," he admitted. "But I have friends nearby. Maggie lives in town. She helps me when she can." Lyra walked beside him as he checked the traps. "Why do you help me?" she asked again. He stopped walking. "I already told you," he said. "Because it's the right thing to do." "But I am not from here," she said. "I am not like you." He smiled. "That doesn't matter." She frowned. "In my world, it always mattered." He looked at her. Well, this isn't your world, this is ours. And here we help each other, even when we don't understand each other. Lyra didn't answer, but she felt something inside her shift again. Later that week, Lyra began to walk farther from the cabin. First just a few steps, then around the clearing, then into the trees. Her strength was returning. One afternoon, she helped Ethan gather wood for the fire. It wasn't much, but she tried. He noticed. "You're getting better," he said. She nodded. "I feel stronger." "That's good," he said. "Soon you won't need us anymore." Lyra looked at him. "Do you want me to leave?" Ethan shook his head. "No, I just mean, you can choose what you do next." She thought about that. What did she want? She had no home, no people, no future, but maybe she could build one. Here, with them. One night, there was a storm. Heavy rain fell against the roof. Thunder cracked across the sky. Lightning lit up the windows. Lyra sat by the fire, wrapped in a blanket. She listened to the wind howl outside. Maggie was staying the night because of the weather. She sat across from Lyra, drinking tea. "You're doing really well," Maggie said. "You've come a long way." Lyra looked at her. "I still do not understand why you helped me." Maggie smiled. "Because I believe everyone deserves a second chance." Lyra tilted her head. "Even me?" "Especially you," Maggie said. "You've been through so much. You deserve kindness." Lyra looked down. "I have seen many things," she said. "Most of them bad." Maggie reached over and touched her hand. "Well, now you're seeing some good." Lyra looked at their hands touching. No fear, no anger, only warmth. She didn't pull away. Days passed, the storm cleared, the sun returned, and with it, a new sense of calm. One morning, Lyra stood outside the cabin and looked at the forest. The trees swayed in the wind, birds sang, the sky was blue. She breathed deeply. For the first time since she arrived on Earth, she felt something strange. Peace, not full, not complete, but real. Ethan joined her. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes, I think I am." He smiled. "Good." They stood together in silence. Then she asked, "Can I stay longer?" Ethan looked at her. "You can stay as long as you want." Lyra smiled. It was small, but it was real. That night, Lyra slept without nightmares. She dreamed of green fields and clear skies, of laughter, of friendship, of a place called home. A week later, Ethan showed her how to use the radio in his truck. "This is how we talk to people who are far away," he explained. Lyra watched as he turned the dial. Static filled the air. Then a voice came through. "Hello? Anyone out there?" Ethan responded. "This is Ranger Ethan, checking in." There was a pause. "Hey, Ethan, how's the weather?" "Cold but clear." "Got it, keep safe out there." Ethan turned off the radio. Lyra looked at it. "You can talk to others? From far away?" "Yes," Ethan said. "It's not perfect, but it works." Lyra stared at the device. "So many voices," she whispered. "So many lives." Ethan nodded. "There's a whole world out there." Lyra looked at him. "Do you think I could meet more of your people?" Ethan smiled. "If you're ready." She thought about it, was she? Could she trust others? Would they accept her? She wasn't sure, but she wanted to try. That weekend, Ethan drove into town with Maggie. They promised to bring back supplies. Lyra stayed behind. She cleaned the cabin, folded blankets, organized books. Then she sat by the window and watched the trees sway in the wind. She felt different, stronger, braver. She was still alien, still from another world, but she was not afraid anymore. She was not forgotten. She was healing, not just her body, but her heart. The days grew longer. The cold air softened a little. Leaves fell from the trees like golden rain. Lyra walked more each day. She helped Ethan with small chores. She asked questions about Earth, about humans, about life on this strange world. Ethan and Maggie answered as best they could. They told her about cities full of lights, about cars that moved fast on roads, about music that made people dance, about food that came in boxes and cans. She listened carefully. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she looked confused. But she was learning. And slowly, she began to trust. 1. Evening after dinner, Lyra sat by the fire with Ethan and Maggie. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. Inside, it was warm. She looked at them both. "I want to tell you something," she said. Maggie put down her cup. "We're listening." Lyra took a deep breath. "My war. It started long before I joined." She looked into the fire. "My people were peacekeepers. We went to other worlds to stop wars, to protect the weak." Ethan leaned forward. "What changed?" Lyra's voice was low. "Our leaders lied. They said we were helping, but really they wanted power. They wanted control over other races." Maggie frowned. "That's not peacekeeping." "No," Lyra said. "It was conquest. And when our enemies found out, they fought back." She paused. "We were betrayed, left behind, told to die." Her eyes looked tired. "I saw my friends fall. I watched them burn." Silence filled the room. Then Ethan spoke softly. "I'm sorry." Lyra nodded. "I ran. I escaped. I flew away without knowing where I would land." She looked at them. "I thought all hope was gone." Maggie reached out and touched her hand. "But you found us." Lyra looked at their hands touching. "Yes," she whispered. "I did." Over the next few weeks, Lyra opened up more. She talked about her homeworld, how the sky glowed red at night, how the oceans shimmered with silver light. She described the great cities built into the mountains, now turned to ash. She showed them how Varelians communicated, not just with speech, but with gestures, colors on their skin, and tones in their voices. Ethan and Maggie tried to copy some of the gestures. They got some wrong, but Lyra smiled. "You are trying," she said. "That matters." In return, they taught her more about Earth. They told her stories of brave people who fought for others, of doctors who saved lives, of farmers who fed whole towns, of soldiers who protected the innocent. She listened with wide eyes. "You have many kinds of heroes," she said. Ethan smiled. "So do you." Lyra looked surprised. "I am no hero." Maggie shook her head. "You survived something terrible. You didn't give up. That makes you strong." Lyra thought about that. Maybe she was stronger than she believed. One afternoon, while walking in the forest, Lyra asked Ethan a question. "Why do you live alone?" Ethan looked at her. "I guess I just like it," he said. "The quiet, the trees, the stars." She walked beside him. "You are not lonely?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But I like being able to help people when they need me." Lyra nodded. "In my world, we lived in groups, families, clans, always together." She looked at the trees. It was loud, it was hard, but it was also good. Ethan smiled. "You miss it?" She looked at him. "Yes." He stopped walking. "Well, you're not alone anymore." Lyra looked at him. "You mean, you've got us," he said gently. "And maybe one day you'll find others like you." She wasn't sure if that was true, but the idea felt nice. That night, Lyra dreamed of home again. Not the burning ruins, not the war, but the time before, when her people danced under the twin moons, when children played in the glowing rivers, when there was still hope. She woke up with tears in her eyes, but they were not sad tears. They were grateful for remembering, for surviving, for finding kindness. A week later, Maggie brought a surprise. She arrived at the cabin with a small box. Inside were books, simple ones, picture books, Storybooks. For learning, she said with a smile. Lyra looked at them. These are for children. Maggie nodded. But they will help you understand our language better. Lyra opened one. It had drawings of animals. Words below: them dog, cat, bird, tree. She pointed at the dog. This is dog? She asked. Ethan laughed. Yes. She looked at the picture again. Dogs are loyal? Maggie raised an eyebrow. Yes, some of them are. Lyra smiled. I like dogs. Ethan chuckled. You might get one someday. Lyra looked hopeful. I would like that. Days passed. Lyra read the books. She learned new words. She practiced speaking. She even wrote things down. Ethan gave her paper. Maggie gave her a pen. Slowly, she became better at talking. She told stories. About her mother, who sang to her at night. About her brother, who taught her how to fight. About her teacher, who told her that strength was not just in weapons but in heart. Ethan and Maggie listened. They asked questions. They laughed. They cried. They shared their own stories, too. Of childhoods in small towns, of parents who worked hard, of dreams they once had, of losses they still carried. Lyra realized something. Humans were not so different from her people. They hurt, they loved, they hoped, even when things seemed impossible. One morning, Lyra stood outside the cabin and looked at the sky. Clouds rolled across the blue. Birds flew in circles. The sun warmed her face. She breathed deeply. She was healing, not just her body, but her spirit. She was beginning to believe in something again. Peace, hope, belonging. Later. That day she found Ethan sitting on the porch. She sat beside him. I want to stay, she said. He looked at her. You already are. She shook her head. No. I mean, forever. Ethan smiled. You don't have to ask. You're welcome here. Lyra looked at him. I have never had a home. He put a hand on her shoulder. Well, you do now. She looked at the trees, at the sky, at the cabin, at him. She smiled. Yes, she whispered. I do. As the sun set, the three of them sat around the fire. They roasted potatoes. They drank tea. They talked. Lyra laughed, truly laughed. It felt strange. But good. She hadn't done that in a long time. Ethan smiled. You sound happy. She nodded. I am. Maggie patted her arm. That's what matters. Lyra looked at them both. You have given me more than I ever expected. Ethan shrugged. We just gave you what everyone deserves. Maggie added, a chance. Lyra looked at the fire. I think I can be okay here. Ethan grinned. You already are. The peace at Ethan's cabin didn't last forever. One evening, while Lyra was reading by the fire, Maggie came back from town with a worried look on her face. There's something happening, she said. People are talking. Ethan looked up from his book. What kind of talk? Maggie sat down. I heard someone mention strange things in the forest. Lights, sounds, people seeing things they can't explain. Lyra looked up from her book. They know. Maggie nodded slowly. Maybe not everything, but I think someone saw something. Or maybe someone told someone else. Ethan frowned. This could be bad. Lyra stood up. We must stay quiet. We must not draw attention. Maggie looked at her. You're safe here. For now. But Lyra wasn't sure. She had seen what happened when people found out about others who were different. Fear, suspicion, hate. She didn't want that to happen here. Not with Ethan and Maggie. Not with this place she called home. 2 days later, a truck arrived near the edge of the forest. It was black. Big. It didn't belong there. Lyra watched it from behind a tree. Ethan and Maggie stood beside her. That's not a local vehicle, Ethan muttered. Maggie narrowed her eyes. It looks official. Ethan turned to Lyra. You should go inside. Lyra shook her head. No, I need to know what they want. A man stepped out of the truck. He wore dark clothes, a badge on his chest. He looked around like he was searching for something. Another man joined him. They talked quietly. Then one of them pulled out a device. It beeped, glowed red. Lyra's breath caught. That was a scanner. They were looking for her. That night, Lyra couldn't sleep. She sat by the fire, staring into the flames. Ethan sat across from her. You okay? He asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she spoke. They will come. Ethan nodded. They might. She looked at him. What will you do if they find me? He smiled gently. I'll protect you. She shook her head. You cannot fight them. They have power, weapons, rules. Ethan leaned forward. But I have something they don't. She tilted her head. What? Something worth fighting for. Lyra looked at him. You would risk your life. For me? He nodded. Yes. She didn't understand. Why would he? She was not human. She was not from here. She had nothing to offer, and still, he chose to help. Again. Always. The next morning, 2 more trucks arrived. They parked outside the forest road. Men in uniforms got out. Some carried guns, others carried tools. They started walking into the woods. Ethan and Maggie watched from the cabin. They're searching, Maggie whispered. Ethan looked at Lyra. We need to move. Lyra nodded. I can hide. Ethan shook his head. No. If they see us run, they'll chase us. Maggie bit her lip. What do we do? Ethan took a deep breath. We face them. They met the men halfway through the forest. Ethan stood tall. Maggie beside him. Lyra, just behind. The leader of the group stopped. He looked at Ethan. Ranger Ethan. We've been looking for you. Ethan crossed his arms. I figured as much. The man glanced at Lyra. Who's this? Ethan answered calmly. She's a friend. She's staying with me. The man raised an eyebrow. She doesn't look like anyone from around here. Lyra held her ground. I am visiting, she said carefully. The man studied her. We've received reports of unusual activity in this area. Ethan shrugged. It's the forest. Things happen. The man didn't smile. We're authorized to investigate any potential threats. Ethan stepped forward. If you're here to scare people, you're barking up the wrong tree. The man stared at him. We're doing our job. Ethan didn't back down. So am I. This woman is under my protection. The man looked surprised. Protection? Ethan nodded. She's been through something. She needs time. The man looked at Lyra again. Where is she from? Lyra spoke clearly. My family lives far away. I came here to heal. The man didn't look convinced. We'll need to take her in for questioning. Ethan stepped in front of Lyra. No. The man frowned. No? Ethan looked him in the eye. She's not going anywhere without me. The man hesitated. Behind him, his team shifted uncomfortably. They weren't expecting this. They expected fear. They expected silence. They didn't expect resistance. Later that day, the agents left. They didn't take Lyra, but they warned Ethan, if we find out she's hiding something, we'll be back. Ethan nodded. I'll be ready. When they were gone, Maggie let out a breath. That was close. Lyra looked at Ethan. You stood up to them. He smiled. I told you. I'm not letting anything happen to you. Lyra felt something warm inside her. Not fear, not pain. Hope. That night, Lyra couldn't stop thinking. She had always believed humans were weak, soft, too kind. But now, she wasn't so sure. Ethan had no weapons, no armor, no special training. Yet, he stood up to armed men. For her, because he believed it was right. That was strength. Real strength. Over the next few days, more people came. Not soldiers. Not agents. Neighbors, friends, people who lived nearby. They heard what happened. They wanted to help. An old farmer named Carl offered shelter. A hunter named Jack brought food. A retired teacher named Linda gave books. Even kids came by. They were curious, friendly. They asked questions. Lyra answered them, slowly, carefully, but she answered, and they listened. One afternoon, a boy named Timmy came to visit. He was small, maybe 10 years old. He looked at Lyra with wide eyes. "Are you really from space?" She smiled. "Yes." He grinned. "Cool." She laughed. Timmy pointed at her skin. "It changes color." She nodded. "Yes. That's how my people show feelings." Timmy clapped. "Can you make it blue?" She focused. Her skin shimmered, turned blue. Timmy gasped. "That's awesome." Lyra smiled. "Thank you." Timmy ran off to tell his friends. Lyra watched him go. She felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Joy. Simple. Pure. Human joy. Weeks passed. More people came. They formed a circle around the cabin. They protected it. They protected her. Lyra realized something. Humans were not weak. They were many. Together. Brave. Kind. They fought not with weapons, but with love, with trust, with heart. That was their power, and now, she was part of it. The forest was quiet again. Birds sang. Leaves rustled in the wind. The sun shined through the trees. But Lyra knew the peace wouldn't last. She had seen too much. War always found a way to return. And now, she feared it was coming for her again. One evening, as Ethan sat on the porch cleaning his boots, Lyra joined him. She looked at the sky. "I must send a message," she said. Ethan looked up. "To who?" "To my people." He paused. "You think there are others like you out there?" Lyra nodded. "There were many Varelians before the war. Some escaped, some went into hiding." She looked at him. "If they are still alive, they might be looking for me." Ethan thought for a moment. "How do you send a message across space?" Lyra smiled slightly. "I have ways." Inside the cabin, Lyra opened a small box hidden under the floorboards. It was a piece of her suit, still intact enough to work. She pulled out a small device from her belt. It was broken, but not beyond repair. She looked at Ethan. "I need tools and time." He nodded. "I'll get what I can." Maggie arrived soon after. When she saw what Lyra was doing, she asked gently, "What are you doing?" "I am calling home," Lyra said. Maggie frowned. "You don't know if anyone will answer." Lyra met her eyes. "I have to try." For days Lyra worked. She fixed wires. She reconnected power cells. She cleaned dust from the screen. Ethan brought her tools from town, old ones, used ones, a radio from a junk shop, a battery from an old car, even some scrap metal. With help from Maggie and Ethan, she built something new. A signal booster. Not perfect, but strong enough. On the 5th night, Lyra stood outside with the device in her hands. Stars filled the sky. She pressed a button. A low hum filled the air. Then static, then silence. She waited, heart pounding. Then, a voice. Weak, crackling, but real. "This is Commander Varric. If this signal reaches any Varelian survivors, respond." Lyra gasped. Her hands shook. She pressed the button. "This is Lyra," she said. "I am alive." There was a pause, then more static. Then, "Lyra, is that really you?" Tears filled her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "I am here." Over. The next few nights, Lyra sent more messages. She told them where she was, what had happened, who helped her. Some responded, others did not. But slowly, she learned the truth. Many Varelians had survived. They were scattered across space. Some lived, among other races. Some hid, some still fought. But they were alive. And now, they knew she was too. But not all messages were good. One night, a different voice came through. Cold, angry, Lyra of House Vela, you are wanted for treason. Her heart stopped. She recognized the voice. Commander Drelak, once her ally, now one of the traitors who betrayed her people. You fled during battle, he continued. You abandoned your post, you carried dangerous knowledge. Lyra's hands tightened around the device. I did not run, she said. I escaped, to survive, to warn others. Drelak laughed. You have no right to speak. You are alone. Forgotten. Lyra took a breath. No, she said. I am not alone. She looked behind her. Ethan stood near the door. So did Maggie, and Carl, and Jack, and Timmy, humans, friends, family. I am not forgotten, she said again, and I will not let you destroy another life. Silence followed. Then the signal cut. The next day, Lyra told Ethan and Maggie everything. They know I'm here. Ethan frowned. Who? The ones who started the war, she said. They want me dead. Maggie looked worried. What do we do? Lyra looked at them both. We prepare. Over the next weeks, Lyra trained the humans. She showed them how to move quietly, how to hide, how to use simple tools as weapons. Ethan learned quickly. Maggie studied tactics. Carl and Jack gathered supplies. Timmy ran messages between houses. Everyone played a part, even the women and children. They were not soldiers, but they were fighters, in their own way. One night, Lyra stood on a hill with Ethan. Below, lights flickered in the valley. The townspeople were preparing. They had heard rumors of strange ships, of voices on the radio, of warnings. Fear spread, but so did courage. Ethan looked at Lyra. You think they'll come? She nodded. Yes, he sighed. Then we'll be ready. Lyra looked at him. You don't have to fight. He smiled. But I want to. She looked surprised. Why? He looked at the town below. Because this is our home, and you're part of it now. Lyra felt something warm inside her. Hope, strength, belief. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting for those who saved her. That weekend, Lyra made a decision. She stood in front of the group, men, women, children. All of them had come together. She spoke clearly. My enemies are coming. Gasps filled the air. But I will not let them hurt this place. Ethan stepped beside her. She's right. We've helped each other before. We can do it again. An older man raised his hand. What can we do? We're not soldiers. Lyra nodded. You are not soldiers, but you are smart, brave, together. She looked around. You have something stronger than weapons. Maggie stepped forward. What's that? Lyra smiled. Hope. Silence followed. Then someone clapped. Another joined. Soon the whole group was cheering, not because they weren't afraid, but because they believed in each other, in Lyra, in them. The next morning, Lyra stood at the edge of the forest, looked at the sky, waiting, knowing. They were coming. She didn't know when, only that she would be ready. Because this time, she wasn't alone. This time, she had friends, family, a home, and she would fight for it, with everything she had. The sky above the forest was dark, not with night, but with clouds, heavy ones, stormy, and something else, something not from Earth. High above, a shadow passed over the sun, a ship, big, cold, metal. It hovered silently over the forest like a predator watching its prey. Inside it, Lyra's enemies gathered. Commander Drelak stood at the front. He looked down at the small town below. So this is where she hides, he muttered. His second-in-command stepped forward. She is alone. We should take her now. Drelak shook his head. No, she has made friends. That means she will fight. He turned to his crew. We end this today. Back on the ground, Lyra felt it before she saw it. The air changed, it grew heavy, silent. Even the birds stopped singing. She stood outside Ethan's cabin with Maggie and Ethan beside her. She looked up. "There they are," she whispered. "Ethan." Followed her gaze. "I don't see anything." Lyra pointed. "There, just above the clouds." Maggie frowned. "They're really here." Lyra nodded. "Yes." Ethan looked at her. "What do we do?" Lyra took a deep breath. "We fight." They ran into town fast. People were already gathering. Carl had built traps. Jack had set up lookouts. Timmy carried messages between houses. Everyone knew what to do. They weren't soldiers, but they were ready. They had each other, and that was more than enough. From the ship above, Drelak gave orders. "Send the drop pods. Take the alien. Leave the humans alive." One of his officers hesitated. "You mean, let them live?" Drelak smiled coldly. "For now." He turned back to the screen. "This planet thinks it can hide one of our kind? Let them learn the truth." The first pod landed near the edge of the forest. It crashed through the trees with fire and smoke. When it opened, armed figures stepped out, tall, armored, silent. They moved like machines. Their weapons glowed red. They searched for Lyra, and they would find her. In the town, alarms rang. People ran to their posts. Ethan stood on the roof of the clinic with a pair of binoculars. He spotted the enemy. "They're coming," he said. Maggie stood beside him. "How many?" "Too many." She looked at him. "Then we hold the line." He nodded. "We do." Lyra led the way. She wore her old armor again. It was broken in places, but it still worked. She moved through the forest with Ethan and Maggie behind her. She stopped near a hill. "This is where we stop them," she said. Ethan looked around. "This place?" Lyra nodded. "It's open. They won't expect a fight here." Maggie frowned. "But we don't have real weapons." Lyra looked at her. "We have brains and hearts." "That's better." She pulled out a small device from her belt. "I can jam their comms, make them blind." Ethan grinned. "That sounds like a plan." The enemy came fast. They moved through the trees like shadows. But they didn't know the land. They didn't know the people. They thought this would be easy. They were wrong. As soon as the first soldier stepped into the clearing, the trap went off. A net dropped from the trees. Another triggered a loud noise. Car horns wired together, making sound like thunder. The soldiers jumped, confused, disoriented. That was all the time Lyra needed. She leapt from cover. Her blade glowed blue. She struck fast. One down, two more came. She fought like fire, like wind, like someone who had nothing left to lose. Behind her, Ethan fired a homemade launcher. It wasn't a real gun, but it shot nails and rocks with force. It hurt. It scared. It worked. Maggie stayed low, moving between hiding spots. She threw smoke bombs, broke lights, made it hard to see. Carl and Jack led others from the town. They used ropes, traps, logs rolled down hills, everything they had. They fought not with power, but with cleverness, with courage, with love. The battle lasted hours. The aliens tried to regroup, but every time they moved, they were met with resistance. Timmy and the kids ran messages between fighters. Old Linda helped carry supplies. Even the farmers held their ground. No one ran. No one gave up, because they were fighting for something bigger than themselves. For home, for family, for each other. Back on the ship, Drelak watched the chaos unfold, his face twisted with anger. "These are just humans," he shouted. His officer looked nervous. "They fight like warriors," Drelak growled. "They are not warriors. They are nothing." He turned to his pilot. "Drop more pods. Take the alien by force." But even as he spoke, something changed. One of the pods exploded mid-air. Another crashed into the forest. More fell. And then, voices filled the radio. Human voices. Strong. Clear. Unafraid. They weren't just defending their town. They were broadcasting across the world, across the stars. They told everyone what was happening. They told the truth. About Lyra, about the war, about the lies, and about the people who stood beside her. On the battlefield, Lyra heard the signal. She smiled. She looked at Ethan. They're listening. He grinned. Yeah, they are. They fought harder, faster, together and slowly. The tide began to turn. Hours later, the last of the enemy ships lifted off. They were damaged, scared, outnumbered. They fled into space, leaving nothing behind but wreckage and silence. The next morning, the town stood quiet. People walked among the ruins. They checked for injuries. They hugged those still standing. They cried. They laughed. They lived. Ethan found Lyra sitting on a hill. She looked tired, but happy. He sat beside her. They're gone, he said. She nodded, yes. He looked at the sky. Do you think they'll come back? She thought for a moment. Maybe, but not anytime soon. He smiled. Good. They sat in silence. Then she asked softly, what happens now? He looked at her. You decide. She looked at the town below, at the people, at Maggie, at Carl, at Jack, at Timmy, at him. She smiled. I know what I want. He raised an eyebrow. What's that? She looked at him. I want to stay. Ethan's smile grew. You already did. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I am not wounded anymore. He put his arm around her. No, he said gently. You're not. She looked at the sunrise. I am home.